Alright guys, so now that you've watched this video, and I want to preface that this video is a literary definition of archetype. It may go against your personal religious beliefs, and that's totally fine, but this is just a literary definition of archetype, alright? An archetype is a pattern that humanity has recognized within the symbols of different cultures, and it ultimately connects people through the human experience. All right, so you've watched that video. Okay, it's just an introduction to archetypes, nothing too crazy. So remember, we have this list of universal ideas. So an archetype can represent these universal ideas because the archetype is the literal. It's a concrete thing, usually that you can touch. It's something like air, right? But or the wind, but it still exists as a thing. All right, so an archetype is the object that exists in literature that we need to start paying attention to see what it could possibly represent. All right, so what you have is this Archetype Graphic Organizer, and over the next 2 weeks, you're going to be working on this from the house or maybe in school if you finish your work early. But I've gone ahead and I've listed all your archetypes on the left-hand side if you scroll down, all those good things. All right, and here are your directions, and I'm going to explain it and then talk about these that I've done for you. So it says, for each of the archetypes listed, copy and paste an image from Google Images and use your list of universal ideas. Remember, it's this, right? Here's universal ideas. Use your list of universal ideas to determine what the archetypes could possibly represent in both a positive and negative setting, right? So identify at least 3 representations of the archetype. Your work will be checked for accuracy. I will be looking at it. And we will discuss these as we read literature throughout the year. And I've completed the first few to get you started. So if we look at our first category, it's nature. All right, so we have the forest, wilderness, or trees. I've just copy and pasted this. So in a positive setting, I think that the forest or wilderness or trees could represent life. It makes me think of the green trees, tree of life, right? Green, the vibrant idea of something growing. So I have it representing life. And then sanctuary. The forest or a tree can be a sanctuary for someone who's seeking refuge against somewhere else, right? Against like society or something that can be harmful. It could also represent safety because it could have some kind of shelter in the forest, wilderness, or trees. And again, that's just what I think, all right? So when I go through and check your stuff, as long as it makes sense, I'm here for it, all right? You don't have to worry about there being a right answer or trying to Google what are the 3 positive representations of your archetype, right? It's just what do you think? Think about what you've read, what movies you've watched, all right? What stories have your family told you that make you think that this thing, this archetype, represents that? All right, so but on the contrary, we have positive representations and then we also have negative representations. So if I think of the forest in a negative view, I think of it being something of isolation. Maybe you've been removed from society or you're lost in the woods. I think of danger because of all the ferocious beasts or all of the things that you could get hurt doing, right? Or even it could be the unknown. You haven't explored it. It's unfamiliar to you, which is scary. All right? So those are just 3 things that I think that the forest or the wilderness or trees could represent. All right? So then we think of the desert. When I think of the desert, I think of something that is infinity, right? It lasts for forever. You can't see the end of it. It makes me think of a journey, which could be something very positive. It also makes me think of the passage of time or time in general because the sand's moving, right? Sand and wind and stuff can sort of break down things to rebuild, which would be positive. But on the other hand, it could also be negative, right? So the passage of time here could be the destruction of something. It could also be death. I also think of desolation, which means there's nothing there, like to be desolate. All right, so those are my 3 associations, positive and negative, for the desert. Then I've got the mountain. All right, so if I think of the mountain, I think of something like victory. Yeah, you get to the top, you celebrate, you've won something. I think of perseverance. Okay, those are things that make me aware that you had to try really hard to get to the top of the mountain. Same thing with strength. All right, so that's something that you have within you. That mountain represents the strength that you might have to get up to the top. Now, on the other hand, if it's negative, I could see it as an obstacle. It could stand in my way to something that I want to get. It can pose a danger, or it could be a threat, and it certainly can be a challenge, all right? All of these things in different contexts can be accurate, all right? They just have to make sense based off what you've read or what you've watched, all right? Now, I do want to note that the representation must be a noun. It can't be a feeling, right? So you can't put scared when you do negative, right? To be scared means it represents fear, or that it represents here if it's winning. Winning is a verb. That's not the representation. We're looking for an abstract idea, right? A universal idea that the actual thing, the archetype, could represent. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. You're going to do this and work on this for the next 2 or so weeks. If you've got questions, just let me know, and I'm happy to help you.